Hi everyone, I'm Jill Willis, and for today's guest I have Martin Series, Senior Director at Foxway for Global Service Delivery. I get to pick his brains on the circular tech ecosystem, how regulation and ESG is driving change, and how refurbishers are adapting to respond to the growing demand for refurbished tech in the enterprise market. Enjoy! So we're seeing far more organisations taking refurbished tech back into the market and enterprises using refurbished tech. What's driving this change?
Great question. And there's a lot of factors now behind this. So we've got the traditional refurbishers that were selling on e-commerce. But what we've now got and happening through regulation and also the way in which products need to be designed to extend their use is manufacturers even looking at refurbished programs and having the ability to actually sell some of this product back out into the channel, so in through to the businesses and public sector organisations.
Is that really coming primarily through regulation, or is that coming from an ESG perspective driven by the OEMs?
All of those things. ESG clearly plays a large part because if you're a large organisation over a certain revenue, you have to report through various regulations, whether that's SECR in the UK or CSRD in Europe, and that means you have to report on your carbon and GHG measurements, so that's very important. But behind that also you've got things like the right to repair. You've got digital passport coming. You've got regulation in certain countries which is going to require public sector organisations to buy a certain percentage of refurbished. So all of those things are becoming a factor. And you've also got, we're going to run out of minerals at a certain point in time. So how do you create this closed loop to enable some of these devices to either be designed in a certain different way to support them for longer, and also to perhaps even use some of that recycling material to eventually put back into that supply chain to make new ones again.
So if there is this increasing demand from enterprise to be able to purchase compliant, high quality refurbished tech, does this present the refurbisher community with an opportunity for growth?
I think it's a huge opportunity, but it also comes with its challenges. You know, as the manufacturers and people in the traditional IT channel start to look at this, clearly the standards go up. So, you know, those functional checks you must make, the cosmetic condition of the equipment that needs to be enhanced, which requires, you know, quite a bit of investment to have the right equipment and resources and expertise to do that. And of course, fundamentally, a very important part of that then is the software, making sure that when somebody turns that device on, it has a legitimate and genuine license, if it's a Windows device, and that it's going to work as it should do. And clearly that's very important to the manufacturers, because if they're going to add their warranty to that product, the first thing they want to make sure is that there's not going to be a large return rate. So all of those things are very important.
So in terms of market maturity, where are we currently sitting at? You know, what's the size of the enterprise market in terms of refurbished tech at the moment? And where do you see that going over the next few years?
Okay, I think, and it's difficult to get true numbers on this because there are a lot of organisations out there, rightly or wrongly, refurbishing devices, selling them without perhaps knowing some of these things that affect the criteria, so such as the MAR programme. They're unaware of it. So they're not necessarily all following that in the correct way. So the market almost certainly is probably bigger than we see in the numbers that we're aware of. But you're certainly talking, you know, a minimum probably, you know, certainly into the millions of devices that are currently coming from secondhand and being made available back for reuse again. But when you then start to think about with the regulation and extending the life, the repairability, all of these good things, and then you start to think about the true opportunity of moving product, refurbished product of a certain standard back into the channel, I think then all of a sudden you're talking easily tens of millions of devices, if not much higher in the future.
And are there certain industry sectors where they're more open to taking back and using refurbished tech within the business?
I think certainly large corporations, and whether that's driven from a point of view of regulation, because everyone wants to reduce their carbon position on that. So clearly that's one point of that. The other is obviously economics. If there are devices that can genuinely be refurbished to a high standard and have some longevity, clearly that saves a lot of money. So large organisations absolutely can have a benefit. And to be honest, certainly in my experience, we've always had those types of services available. We used to call it redeployment, so where we'd make product back available into that corporate environment, but it tended to be their own product, and they were just recirculating it and actually refurbishing it. But now they're interested in perhaps procuring product that's come through those channels. So that absolutely offers another huge growth area. The other one is obviously the regulation, and we're seeing this in certain countries like France, which is demanding that, say, public sector buys a certain percentage of refurbished devices when they go to refresh their equipment that they have. So that, again, will drive growth in that area.
And is that a trend that's likely to be followed by other markets? Is the UK, as an example, looking to go down that road?
I think absolutely it will follow. There'll be some, others. Well, some countries will be more proactive than others, but absolutely, we don't expect that to be followed across other countries. Certainly, EU's like to embrace it in a bigger way, and I'd like to think that the UK would follow. But I think, if you ally that then to the ESG goals that larger organisations have, it's also going to be driven from that side as well. So even in North America, we're going to start to see more of that activity.
So these changes must be shifting the ecosystem, the refurbisher ecosystem as we traditionally known it. How is it moving, and can you paint a picture so that we can understand what that looks like today?
If I think about the recycling of electronic material, there are a lot of very good specialist recyclers. If they are the organisations that are being used to reprocess that equipment, then we absolutely are confident in the outcomes of that material and how that can be reused. But coming up the level is how do we embrace this whole piece around extending the life, making devices more repairable, and that comes back to the OEMs. They've got to think about how do we design our devices now in a different way, and I don't think that therefore can just be because of aesthetics. It's got to be what materials are using, what minerals have to go into that. The whole production piece, the other resources such as water production used in this. And all of those things then become part of that journey. So manufacturers are going to have to produce devices in a different way. They're going to have to make them more ecological in terms of the material resources they use and consume. They're going to have to make them so they last longer. That also affects then the software, because you've then got, well, hang on, the software also could be a point of obsolescence if it's not supported. So we've got to think about those bits. And then even during its life, how do we make it repairable? And at the end of its life, ultimately, how do we make it easier to recycle? And probably what I should have added, of course, is in that piece where we might take a device back from one organisation and want to refurbish it, we need to make it manageable and, again, repairable, refurbishable, because that also has a lot of technical challenge to it. Repainting a laptop is quite complex. Changing out components is not always easy. It takes time, and of course that affects cost. And ultimately, we've got to make sure that we can produce an affordable product that people understand the difference between the cost of a new and the cost of refurbished.
And I guess as well, there's the challenge of re-educating the channel so that they also understand, if they are specialist value-added resellers working with specific markets, that they also understand the role that refurb tech can play within that entire piece.
Absolutely. And the channel is an interesting one, because the challenge we have there is we've got manufacturers who clearly are focused on selling new devices. That's their target. But now we're saying, well, hang on, you've got to now embrace a percentage of those sales as refurbished. And that's, a big commercial challenge to those organizations. You've then got the established channel models, using distribution into resellers to the end customers. You've got the systems that sit behind that to drive all of this. So that whole ecosystem, if you want to call it that, is, needs to embrace all those different parts, and ultimately to things like the warranty processes. They're not that easy to probably as simple as they first sound. So yes, we can produce a refurbished device, but how do we get it to market? How do we create that confidence from an end customer to want to buy that product? And I think, again, that's why it becomes important where the OEMs are involved, because they can add that little bit of credibility beyond a traditional refurbisher.
So where do you see things moving over the next 2 to 3 years, and where do you think that refurbishers can really gain competitive advantage if they are looking at the enterprise space for growth?
Okay, I think there's a number of areas. I think in terms of as the demand increases, people become more and more aware of ESG, that the ability to be able to purchase a quality device, that offers enormous opportunity in channel. And I think, if we look at some of the industry research that's been done by people like Context and Canalys, there is a prediction of in the next 5 years plus that we're going to see a hockey stick effect in the amount of demand for refurbished devices. And a good percentage of that is going to be because it's being supplied back into the channel. So back through the resellers, back through to their end customers, the largest customers that we have, and not just the UK or Europe, but globally. Because they're all going to embrace this as a way of achieving their ESG goals. So it's a huge opportunity, but the software piece clearly plays a very large part of that. The quality standards play a huge part in that because it's going to all be about consistency and quality assurance. We've got to all be reaching certain standards and being consistent with those. And if we all do that in the refurbishment industry, then we'll all grow and hopefully profit from that.
As we wrap up today's Refurbisher Live Lounge, we'd love to hear from you. What changes have impacted you most in circular tech? Is it regulation, adopting new standards, or something else? Hit subscribe and tell us in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.